The J. Michael Show.
Today we're talking to J.J. Davis, all about his sportscaster career, his acting career, and everything else he's done. He's written a great book. And we're going to meet him. Here's J.J. Davis.
Hey, it's nice to meet you. It's nice to meet somebody else with my name.
Yeah, there you go. Getting
Michael
used to Jay. When I was in
right.
radio, I was a radio DJ for years, and I went by J. Michael. And so it stuck. And now I'm still known as J. Michael, even though
Well, my actual name's John Joseph Davis, but I've been called and been known as JJ all my life, and even in my professional career.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy having an air name and then your own name. But
I always thought radio guys were much more talented than TV guys, because you guys have to ad lib. If TV guys can't read a prompter, they're no good.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy having a name like that. But I'm interested in talking to you about your book.
Right.
Tell me about J.J. Davis and what the book is about.
Well, as I say in the book, not everybody gets there, whatever their definition is of getting there. And how many times do we watch TV, Jay, and we hear on these award shows, et cetera, people saying, follow your dreams, they'll come true. Well, as I say in my book, I wanted to title the book, Dreams Do Not Always Come True. Mm-hmm. Because for me, my idea of getting there, big time broadcaster, national syndication, hosting the Olympic Games, it never got there. Grew up in sports in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
My idol was Jim McKay, host of Wide World of Sports way back when. The greatest storyteller I know of. Mm-hmm. And I weighed 100 pounds when I graduated from high school, so I knew there, Jay, that it wasn't in the cards to play sports. So I just said to myself, I want to be a sports broadcaster. And as you and I know, most guys and girls in high school don't have a clue of what they want to do.
Right.
But I did. So I pursued a broadcasting career, started in Baltimore, producer, ABC Sports in New York, production assistant, Spokane, Washington, weekend sports anchor, weekday reporter, Wilmington, North Carolina, sports director, Billings, Montana, sports director. I went to Hollywood for a year. I got fired in Billings. I spent a year in Hollywood. My picture was in Variety. I was in a play, got back in the business. Scranton, Pennsylvania, live from Yankee Stadium, live from spring training, live from Tyson Spink's fight. Weekend sports guy, got demoted there as well. Jumped back into some professional theater. Mm-hmm. And then I got a job in Harrisonburg, Virginia, sports director there 10 years. Roanoke, Virginia, 1 year, got demoted there. Omaha, Nebraska, from 2002 to 2009, 10. They took us all off the air. Went back to Virginia for a year, didn't work out there, came back out here, so now I'm in Council Bluffs, Iowa. It's been a crazy ride.
It's like the J.J. Davis World Tour, or at least the USA Tour.
Yeah, did I remember Scranton-Wilkes-Barre? I was in Scranton-Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania from 86 to 90. I was in Scranton-Wilkes-Barre. So just a crazy ride. My dreams never came true. I've met all kind of crazy people. I met Miss Babe Ruth when I was a kid at Memorial Stadium. I worked in the same newsroom as Oprah Winfrey in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Before she was Oprah, I didn't know her. I just walked by her, saw her, met Barack Obama when he was here. I mean, was on the Love Connection in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Knew Jason Miller, the priest in The Exorcist, who threw himself out the window. I did plays for him at the Scranton Public Theater. So my life and my career, you can never accuse me of not trying. Mm-hmm. You can never accuse me of not giving it my all. There's no one that's tried harder than me. No one that's wanted it more than me. And yet, I never really got there. And people have been saying, man, you should write a book. You got to write a book. All the stories, I'd read it. So I went ahead and wrote a book.
And so you don't have any Oprah stories. You said you just passed by her.
No, I just remember. It was 1978, 79. Mm-hmm. And it was my first TV job, Jay.
No.
And I got hired on Thanksgiving in 78. I got a call from the then he's now deceased sports director, Klaus Wagner. Hey, you want to come work for us? Because I had interned there from Towson State University. So I said, sure. So I got a job. The first day I started crying. I didn't think I could handle it. I had to cue up a tape, 3/4-inch tape. I had to cue it up. That's all I had to do. And I made it bigger than what it was. I left. I was crying. And my girlfriend at the time kicked me in the butt and said, get back in there. Next thing you know, I'm a sports producer. I was the first ever sports producer at this ABC station in Baltimore, which was then #1. So I saw Oprah, Erin Moriarty, who's on CBS, I believe. You know, I saw them, walked around, but I didn't really know her, but I knew of her. I was like, man, and now look at her, you know?
Right. Well, you know, when you carry the camera around and the microphone and you're the sportscaster, newscaster, whatever, that opens a lot of doors for you, doesn't it?
Well, I hoped it would. You know, one door that had opened in Harrisonburg, I was the sports director there. I auditioned for a job at Home Team Sports in Washington, D.C., which is now massive. Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. They televise Orioles games. Then it was Home Team Sports. And they had a 90-minute live pregame show called the Toyota Pro Football Preview. And I remember I actually sprained my ankle playing softball, but I drove up for the audition. I left my crutches outside the door because I didn't want them to see me limping. I went in because they liked the tape that I sent, which I couldn't believe. And next thing you know, Jay, I get the gig.
Right.
So every Thursday, my station in Harrisonburg, Virginia, market 17180, has let me off. And I'm driving up 66 to D.C. to host this live football show on the Redskins, Ravens, and Panthers. I get the Washington Post. I'm getting the Baltimore Sun. I'm getting the papers from Carolina, and I'm studying them. And I wrote scripts. And then I memorized them all. So when I went on the set, I had no scripts. It's all the truth. I put the scripts behind the scenery, behind the backdrop, and me and former Redskins tight end Terry Orr with his big Super Bowl ring, we hosted this show. Each segment devoted each team. And I thought I could show my personality, my style, my knowledge, because I see sports differently than everybody else. And I thought, well, this is going to propel me to the next level. Didn't happen.
You said that you see sports differently. How do you see that?
Well, let me put it to you this way, Jay. How many guys do you know his favorite athlete's Jim Thorpe? Do you know who Jim Thorpe is?
I don't.
1912 Olympic Games, the decathlon pentathlon champion, the Oklahoma Sac and Fox Tribe Indian, Jim Thorpe. Burt Lancaster paid him in a movie in the 50s. My favorite football player is number 60, Chuck Bednarik of the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the last modern two-way men. Jack Dempsey, Joe Louis. Bill Tilden. I see sports through a different lens. It's just not on the scoreboard winning and losing, which, of course, today's more so than ever is important. But I see the blood, the sweat, and the tears, and the human beings and the people behind it. And as I wrote in my book, the credit does belong, as Roosevelt once said, to the man who's actually in the arena, a man whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood. So I see through just the highlights and the scores and the BS commentary, which I hear on radio and TV now, all the talking heads, everybody's got this, but I see it differently than everybody else. And I just thought that my knowledge of sport, the history of sport, the Olympic Games, etc., the NFL, baseball, track and field, Dave Waddle. I mean, I just thought that the way I see it would help me get there because I can truly tell a story, and it just hasn't happened.
Well, I mean, you have to consider that there isn't just a quarterback on the field. There's 11 other guys. And
Team. That's right, Dave.
It is a team, and you have to work on what all they're doing.
Correct.
And what they're collecting numbers for, yards, everything.
Correct.
And put it all together as one team, not just one guy. I
totally agree. A news director in Scranton told me when he fired me, you're not a team player. You're not a team player. You got to read my book. You should see and read about all I did for that station. I wasn't a team player. I mean, so I've had some crazy stories. You know, I went to Baltimore. I went to New York, ABC Sports. When John Lennon was shot, I was on the 6th floor of the ABC building phoning in scores to Monday Night Football. I mean, I did some real world wrist wrestling in Petaluma, California. I stood on the star at the old Texas Stadium. I was at Baja Ensenada, Mexico for the Baja 1000. But I knew that I wanted to get on the air. So I walked up to Dennis Lewin. He was the big cheese back then, and said, you know what? I was living on 49th and 6th Avenue, Radio City Apartments, and said, you know what? This isn't for me. So I was one of 6, 8 production assistants. If I'd have stayed, I probably made a ton of money, probably would have directed and produced all around the world, but it wasn't for me. So I got a job, drove 2,700 miles in less than 2 days. It's all in my book, JJ of LOCH RAVEN. I got a job in Spokane, Washington, weekend sports anchor, weekday news reporter. I'm standing on a bridge one day doing a story on the GNP. I had no idea what GNP was. I thought it was RBI, and I had a rough experience there. Then I went to Wilmington. I was in Michael Jordan's house the day after he was drafted. I knew Michael Jordan just as a broadcaster, not personally. He wouldn't know me from Adam now, but I met his parents. We did stories. The last words I said in his story was, look out, NBA, here he comes. And then from there, I went to Billings, Montana. I got fired in Billings. I got demoted in Wilmington. I've just been through so many crazy, heartbreaking things. I covered Montana State's football team the last time the Bobcats won the national title in Charleston, South Carolina.
Wow.
They used to have teleports. We didn't have computers, as you know, back then.
Right.
We had teleports. You had to book a satellite window. And I can remember running down the street, my bare feet, trying to make this 15-minute satellite window to get my stories back to Montana. And then I got fired. I got taken off the air. So I said, you know what? I'm going to Hollywood, and I'm going to pursue theater because I've done theater everywhere. And I left New Year's Day, 1986, driving through a snowstorm through Yellowstone National Park. I see snowmobiles going faster than me going by. I see moose, and I'm thinking, Jay, if I break down, they'll never see or hear from me again. So I hit LA, got an agent, and auditioned for shows, Love Connection. I did a play. My picture was in Variety, a Casting Call magazine. But I didn't like being broke. I was a room service waiter, waiting on the stars. I waited on Journey, the band up by the pool, John Madden, the whole bit. And I just decided that I wasn't going to wait 10 years. But I got some great stories from there where I auditioned once for a commercial. I stunk. I left. I was halfway to the parking lot, and I said, I can do better than that. So get this, Jay. I walk back into this big conference room with all these big wigs, and I lean into this person's face and say, I want to do that again. I did it again. I did it better, didn't get the commercial, but I was proud that I stuck up for myself and went back. Then I went from there back to a Rapid City trip. You want to hear a crazy story.
I do. Tell the story.
All right. Well, I go from Hollywood. I stayed overnight with my brother for a couple of months in Bismarck, North Dakota. He was in broadcasting at the time. Then I get a job in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, 57th, whatever market in the country, big time, weekend sports guy. I get this job. I'm there 3 years. And one day the news director comes in the edit bay and he says to me, how come you don't do sports like so-and-so does? They took me off the air weekends. I got fired in Billings. They took me off the air in Scranton. I go to my third-story apartment in a rich neighborhood atop this real nice house, and I'm crying. Gosh, why isn't this happening to me? I walked into the Scranton Public Theater. I turned a negative into a positive, and I did 3 shows. I can remember another crazy story. We get a new news director. He comes to me and says, I don't know what happened to you before, but you're my weekend guy. So, Jay, I actually did a play called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. I'd come in early on a Saturday, write both sportscasts, because as you know, back east they're at 11, so 6 and 11. Now they're all over the place. But anyway, I wrote both shows. After the 6:30, I drive in my car up the one road up top, the Pennsylvania Summer Theater Festival, Lackawanna County Stadium. I do the play. I miss curtain call. I got to scramble down the stadium, down one road, and the baseball stadium's at the bottom. Wow. So if I hit traffic, I'm screwed. I literally would get back at like 10 after 11. My show's, as you know, at 11:20. my throat's hoarse, and I do my sports. I did that for weeks. And then one day, long story, I'm ready to anchor. I'm anchoring a Sunday night. Our sports director was in San Diego. He's doing the Holiday Bowl. I'm just throwing it to him live. So I've worked about 11 days in a row. My fiance is in the newsroom waiting for me. It's like 10 after 11. I get on the set with this brand new anchor. I said to this anchor, don't worry on the 2-shot. Just give it to me. I'll go. I go. I get off. The news director calls me up and says, you hung so-and-so out there on the set.
Oh.
And I just lost it for about 30 seconds. I used a bad word. I said, you don't know what the blank you're talking about. You ever sat there on the set? No. I said, well, then I'm helping this person, blah, blah, blah. And then Jay, you know what an audio limiter is, right?
Right.
The audio limiter grabs me and says, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I pulled back and went. Then JJ shows up. I go, are you okay? And the person says, yeah, I'm okay. We'll talk about it when we get in. And I said, I will. We will. So that was a Sunday. Thursday, I go in. I get fired. Told I'm not a team player. And I got to get married. I get married. I don't even have a job.
Wow.
You ought to read the Rapid City chapter. We drive to Rapid City. We're not even out of Pennsylvania, Jay. And I see motorcycles saying Sturgis or bust. Now, I don't know what Sturgis is at the time. I'm like, what in the hell is that? All right. So we drive. We go all the way to, I think, maybe Iowa City, maybe. We stay in a hotel. I see all these motorcycle guys walking in, and I got this lovely young bride. So my imagination's going crazy.
Right.
Bottom line is we get to Rapid City. The next day I was going to be the weekend sports guy for the guy that took my place in Montana. That's how bad I needed a job because mom and dad are looking at me funny because I'm newly married. I see Tumbleweed going across the road driving into Rapid City. I went, we made a mistake. Jay, we get to my friend's house. My new bride goes right to the bathroom and she's crying.
Oh.
She's crying. And I'm like, don't worry. She's new. She hasn't done it. I'm trying to blow it off. So that night she sleeps on the sofa. I'm sleeping below her like a dog on the floor holding her hand. We got up the next day, Jay, and I said, we went to look at apartments to try to play the game. We both agreed we can't stay. So we didn't even take her Chevy Cavalier off the back of the U-Haul trailer because we knew we weren't going to stay. So then we spent more wedding money. I go to Ames, Iowa. I kept in touch with a news director there at Ames. This crazy stuff, I'm telling you. And I get an interview for the weekend sports job. We open up the back of the U-Haul. My suit's back in there someplace. I grab it. I go to this interview. This is crazy. The person says to me, let's go to lunch. I'm like, cool. Now, this is like Wednesday on this hell trip from Pennsylvania. We go to lunch. I open the door. The news director says, what are you doing? I'm just being a gentleman. Don't do that. We sit down to eat. The waiter comes. The lady would like to order first. What are you doing? So needless to say, Jay, I was a little frazzled. So I'm sure I rambled. I go back to the hotel with my wife. No internets, no cell phones, nothing. It starts to rain, and you can literally see rain bubbles on the hotel walls. It's true. You can ask my wife.
Wow.
Thursday comes around. We're sitting in the restaurant across the street. Hey, call me if the phone rings at the restaurant. We'll be right across the street. Nothing.
Oh.
Friday, 5 o'clock rolls around. I call the station. So-and-so has left for the weekend. I looked at my new bride, my wife, Joan, and said, I didn't get this job. So we have to drive back to Pennsylvania to mom and dad's house and spend the rest of our wedding money. My wife says, stop here. I want to get some cigarettes because my wife really doesn't smoke. She gets cigarettes. I'm driving, with the governor on the U-Haul, right? It doesn't matter how much. My foot probably was going through the floor, but I'm only going 65.
Right.
She says to me, my eyes are watering up. I'm trying on 80, 80 East. She says, we lost all our money. We stop at McDonald's. I'm ordering. I can see her with a payphone calling her parents crying.
Oh.
So then we drove back. So it was a week of hell. It's in the book. It's the Rapid City trip. And so I've just been through a lot of stuff.
Well,
But I still believe.
you and I have a lot in common because I had 20 years in radio and going from job to job, station to station, up and down the dial. And I mean, every one of them, to me, I always describe radio as the most wonderful job you'll ever have as you slowly starve to death because you're not making any money at all.
But Jay, was it about the money for you?
No, it was about the people I worked with, the talent on the air, the stories and things I covered when I did news, when I did just DJing, and talking to people. That was
Right.
the thing that was wonderful. It's like this show, I get to talk to these very interesting people that have funny stories, and you sit and tell me, and this is great, and it's going out.
Well,
to
as
other
I
people.
call it, it's for love of the game.
Right.
I did it for love of the game.
Mhm.
I didn't do it because I now as you get older, you and I know you need money. But when you're young, I mean, I didn't care. Like I said, I drove 20. I called my mother when I drove to Spokane. She thought I was in Ohio, 2,700 miles in less than 2 days. You do what it takes. So I look at my story and I think, my story is probably no different than others. Everybody's had it tough. Other people have probably had it harder than I am. But in the broadcasting field, when I read about somebody who's 24 years old and jumped right into a major market, or when I read about somebody that's jumping right into a network with little or no experience, I'm thinking to myself, man, I would have killed to get that opportunity.
Mhm.
And I just think that I represent a lot of people who never really, who always dreamed, because I dream and I'm still a dreamer, but never could quite reach that carrot, could never quite stick their hands through the clouds and get the prize.
Mm.
And I feel like I represent all those people. And also the fact that I'm not giving up. I mean, I've got 45 plus years of experience in television. I've done theater, professional everywhere.
Mhm.
I've tried my luck in Hollywood. My look was right then because I was 29 and I looked like I was 18,
Right.
but my mind wasn't right. You got to have the right mind. If I'd have plugged in my mindset for broadcasting into acting, Rock Dutton, you ever hear Rock Dutton? He was the groundskeeper in Rudy. I did scenes with him at Towson State. I mean, there's so many people that I've come in touch with or rubbed elbows with, and they all reached their heights or whatever you want to call it. And I didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm still figuring it out, but I still believe. I still believe that my story is worth telling. I still believe it'd make a great screenplay. The writer who helped edit my book, Robin Pike, she's in North Carolina. Here's a story. I'm looking up this football player that I covered in Wilmington. It's in the book. Crazy story. So I'm trying to find him to confirm the story that I remember. I call up the secretary at this office somewhere in Carolina. Her name is Robin Pike. I say, I'm looking for Steve Shepard. She goes, oh, he used to work here, but he doesn't work here anymore. And she says, why? I said, well, I'm writing a book and I want to get my facts right because I like to think at times I'm a journalist because I think journalism's out the window today.
Yes.
She
it
goes,
is.
well, no, he's here. But she goes, I edit books. So I just kind of blew it off and thought, well, okay, great. Well, guess what happens? I call her back and say, Robin, can you edit my book? Guess where she's from, Jay? I'm
Where?
from Baltimore. She's from Patterson Park in Baltimore.
Wow.
So for me, that was an omen. I
Yes.
said, you got to edit my book. Her name's Robin Pike. She's in Carolina. She edited my book. I think I could write it much better now because I wrote it in 2020. But, you grow, and so it's out there. I haven't publicized it that much. You're the first person I've talked to in months on the radio. I think the Scranton Wilkes-Barre paper did an article on it because I bugged people. I watch these morning shows, and if you're a star, if you've had a hint of fame, you're on there and they're trying to publicize your book, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm Mr. Nobody. I'm just a guy who put his head down, plowed along, tried his guts out, many, many tears, shed many, many tears, and I'm still sitting in anonymity. But I still believe that something's going to happen for me. And I do believe that I'm different than most people. And I'm meant to touch people in a certain way. I don't know yet, but it's coming.
But JJ, do you consider yourself successful?
Well, people have asked me that. It's funny. I just did a play. It closed 2 weeks ago. I'm driving home, and my cousin Linda from Baltimore calls. I haven't spoken to her in 50 years. I haven't seen her more than her sister and brother are on the cover of my book.
Mm-hmm.
She says to me, why don't you think you've made it? I said, well, it just depends on the day. One day on this shoulder will be the angel. Look at all you've done. Most guys, are sitting in bars or blah, blah, blah. They settled. They might even be making more money than you, but they're not happy. You did it. You tried. And that's cool. And on the next day, never made it. Never made the network. Never got to host the Olympics. Never made it on the major stage in broadcasting. So it just depends on the day. But the older you get, as you know, you get more honest with yourself. No more speeches, no more stories, no more fabricating things. The truth comes out. So I'm proud of myself. I know I've done more than most, but I still have that little annoying, nagging dude on my shoulder saying, you didn't make it. I've also been the handheld camera guy for the College World Series for the past 12 years. Every game, Big Ten baseball, every game, Creighton basketball, volleyball, people know me, all the ushers. But I finally said, you know what? I'm done. I'm not doing it this year for the first time in 12 years. On my wall, the NCAA gave me a bat, with my name on it.
Right.
They wrote pictures and everybody signed it. So I'm doing a lot of things. I'd like to think I'm a humble guy. I've shot the stadium host. I'm the guy that tells them kind of what to say, even though I can do it. I've done it. So I've done a lot of things and continue to do a lot of things. And at 68 soon to be, as you can tell, nobody's got my energy. Nobody's got my energy. I've got something special. And I'm thinking I might be a motivational speaker. Maybe that's the way to go because I'm good in front of crowds. But we don't know. I'm hoping my book, but I haven't hawked it that much. I got to make an audiobook. You got $1,000? Come on, you're ready. I need $1,000 to make an audiobook.
Read the book yourself, strip the audio off, and send it off to somebody. You can't do that anymore, can you?
Nah, it sucks. So I'm just, I work at Iowa Western Community College, the top junior college athletic program in the country. It's football teams, 2-time national champs, soccer team, everything. So I'm very lucky that it helped save my career. I'm sitting in my office. I shoot stories, both sports and non-sports, and I get to edit them. And I think I have a gift. I'm a storyteller. A lot of people report the stories, but storytellers are rare. Yes. And I've been called that, and I believe I am that. And that's why even at 68, man, soon to be, I'm not giving up. I'm not.
Well, okay, storyteller, tell us how you met Barack Obama.
He came to Nebraska years back. My kids were not even up to my knee. He came to a town called Papillion, Nebraska. Guess where I live? Papillion, Nebraska.
There you go.
Somebody called me and said, and this is when I believe I'd already been ousted. I think it was in 2011. I can't remember. Somebody said, Barack Obama is going to be in your area. So I find out he's literally right up the street. So I get my son, who's now a mechanic. He knows everything about cars. He's got 5 vehicles. He just sold his Corvette. He's a stud. He's about this big. He and I walk up 2 blocks. I see all these vehicles. They got to be Secret Service, whatever. And I look like crap. I don't care. I'm just hanging out. Okay. So we're watching, and I'm like pointing out to my son, yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's it. And then this guy comes down to the group of people that I'm in, and he says, hey, y'all want to meet Barack? I'm like, yes, sir. You like a nice Hawaiian punch? Sure. So we walk up the street. We walk literally to the parking lot across from the house. So we're across the street. And I say to my son, this is a meet and greet. He probably does it for everywhere he goes,
Right.
So he comes out of the house. And of course, I got my phone, and I didn't quite realize to shoot it like this. I'm shooting it like this with my cheap little phone because I don't know. So he comes over, and I've got the video, and he starts talking to people. And of course, I'm feeling my oats. I'm an asshole. I'm trying to talk to him. So I'm saying stupid stuff to him because I'm trying to garner his attention. So he's probably looking at me, Jay, going, who's this a-hole? But he was nice to me. And that was it. I got to meet him. I took the video to our local TV station. I don't even know if they used it. But yeah, I got to meet him. Now I wish I could see him again and go, hey, man, I was just a jerk back then. I was just trying to say hi to the president. But it's too late. Yeah, I met him. And I feel like the real life Forrest Gump, as I say in my description of my book. I've rubbed elbows with I did a live sportscast with Jimmy Valvano. The year after right after they won the national title in '83, I'm in Wilmington. Jim Valvano and I are in a Hardee's parking lot because he did a promotional campaign around the state teaching basketball with Jim Valvano. I couldn't even see the monitors because I got 8,000 kids around me. I met Pat Sajak. He was in the Azalea Festival back in '83. I was in it. I had no idea. I was on a float, didn't know what to do. But he and I talked on a balcony afterwards. He was young. Nobody knew who he was. But I remember that I just talked to him a little bit. So I feel like I've rubbed elbows with a lot of people, and I've been immature. I've had some bad luck. It all wasn't their fault. A lot of it was mine. You realize that as you get older. My news director in Billings comes into my editing bay door one day after we went to the Metra in Billings to look at camera placements for the state basketball tournament. An engineer comes up to me and gets in my face and says, just because you worked at ABC Sports, we know what to do. Something to that. So, of course, you know how it is, Jay. You're always a badass when people hold you back, right? You're always tough. They're not going to let you go. So then later that day, my news director comes in my edit and he starts crying. He's crying. I let you down. He's crying. So that just, I was at a play in Hollywood. Opening night. Yes. We have notes. The director comes over to us and says his wife was the lead. She was a former ballerina. He's the director. He says, JJ, I forget how he put it, but basically, you didn't do a good job. You didn't work well with my wife. You know what I said? What? So that's because your wife tried to go to bed with me and I turned her down. Ooh. And again, Jay, everybody's coming after me and they're, you're all real rough and tough. So they dropped me out of the play. Days later, I'm working room service waiter, 10 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning. And I get this call. You're back in the show. We fired them. So I've got some crazy stories, man. I'm telling you that most people, I think, can or can't relate to. But I know the thing they can relate to, it's hurt. I've cried a lot. I've been really hurt a lot. I wanted it so bad. And it just never happened for me. But I refused to give in. I feel young. I'm acting young. But then, as you know, you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, my God, I got no hair. Yeah. I got old people spots on my hands. My legs cramp when I'm in bed.
The bags under your eyes have bags.
So, but I'm not going to give up, man. But my story is unique. And I think it needs to be told. I really haven't hawked it much. It's called JJ of LOCH RAVEN. It's $10 on Kindle. Again, I don't know if I wrote it as well as I could have.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead, take a moment and hawk it here and tell us where we can find your book.
Well, it's on Amazon.com, JJ of LOCH RAVEN. It's $10, piece of cake. And I think if you read it, you might not relate to some of the stories, but you'll relate to the fact that this guy is not giving up. This guy truly believes, and through thick and thin, through all the no's, through all the tears, he still keeps going. And at 68, I tell people the only time I'm going to stop is when they put me in a box. So, I've got plays coming up I want to audition for, professional theater. I still believe somebody's going to find me someday and something's good's going to come. But I feel like I've been a good example to children. I don't drink or smoke. I'm a good dude for the most part.
What are you doing now and what's making you happy now?
Well, what makes me happy is having been done a show, now, for the first time in 12 years, I might have to work here at Iowa Western. And, Jay, I'm telling you, I would shoot a baseball game here and a softball game. And then I'd scramble down to Charles Schwab Field where Creighton baseball plays, home of the College World Series. And I'd work that game as a handheld camera guy. Or I'd work that game, and then I'd scramble over to Iowa Western. So now I don't have to do the handheld bit anymore. And I've told people recently, I don't miss it. I don't miss it. So now I just work at Iowa Western. I go home to my wonderful wife, and we're just going to be together, go for walks. I'm going to England in July, which is a dream come true with me and my son. When we get back, I'm going to pursue some more theater, professional and amateur, and just do my thing and not have to worry about working all day at Iowa Western and then scrambling down to the basketball game at Creighton handheld. I'm backing off a little bit. And yeah, so that's what makes me happy. It's just me and my wife watching TV. Sometimes, as you know, Jay, it's the mundane things. It's sitting home watching in your skivvies, watching freaking Jeopardy, or watching The Wheel, or what anything. You're just brain dead, or just going for a walk. It doesn't take money to be happy.
There you go.
But it helps. It helps.
Okay, well, your book is also available on Amazon. That's where I found it. And
Right.
Are there other outlets where the book can be
No, that's
purchased?
That's it. It cost me a lot of money to get it edited. Again, Robin Pike, she's the best. And I have a guy in line, our former director at the TV station that I work for. He'll do the audiobook for me, but I just need $1,000 and I don't have it. And I'm trying to be the good husband, don't worry, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to do it eventually because I think when people hear my voice, I'll be crying half the time. They'll think, man, this guy's really been through it.
Well, JJ, thank you so much for being my guest on the J. Michaels Show, and I hope you have a lot of success with your book.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me on. Okay, I love your set. I love you're a good man. You're a kind-hearted soul that's actually given me this opportunity. And again, it's JJ of LOCH RAVEN. It's a good story. It's a crazy story. You'll read it and go, man, he got nailed again, or wow, the craziest stuff's happened to this guy. But I keep going. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Stay true to yourself.
You are very welcome. And yes, please keep going. We'll see you next time on the J. Michaels Show.
Goodbye.